listening to the Brain Profits Podcast. Are you ready for the show? We are, so let's go.
Yeah, no, definitely.
If I were you, I would learn how to play the recorder because that probably is along your line of work. Anyways, thank you, Dr. McCall-Robison, for coming on today.
I have no idea what that even meant.
A recorder? Well, when you finally learn what that is, you will see the compliment that I have paid you.
All right.
Stacy knows what a recorder is. You're on
Can
mute.
we just welcome our guest, please?
Yeah, Dr. Robison, just know that Philippe and I are just as confused about whatever you just came into. It makes absolutely no sense to us as well.
Yes, you are on the show actually to diagnose Doug with whatever mental health issue he actually has.
Right. Yeah, go ahead.
I got it.
All right. So 3, 2, 1. Thank you for joining this episode of the Brain Profits. I'm Doug Mapp, cognitive development professional, and I'm here with
Stacy Busby, executive coach. I'm gonna squeeze you out this time. We've had some awkward pauses. So anyway, Doug, start it over again.
All right. So I'm Douglas.
You're going, Philippe.
Okay.
All you gotta do is you can start. He'll fix it.
Okay.
So go Philippe first.
I'm Dr. Philippe Dion, board certified neurologist, author of the book Neuroplasticity, Your Brain's Superpower, and the ebook Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. I'm also the course creator of the online course, Take Charge of Your Brain. And we're here with Mrs.
Stacy Busby. You did it. It only took like 4 or 5 episodes. Yeah, Stacy Busby, executive coach. And I'm really excited because we've got a guest on that Doug has invited that also messes with the thinking of folks and helps everyone reach their highest potential. So, Doug, who have you asked to join us today?
So I've asked Dr. McCall-Robison to join us today. She is a real doctor, folks. No, anyways, no. As opposed to a fake doctor. But anyways, no, she's on. We had her come on today to join us to talk about what she has going on. We're going to get into it deep. How you doing today, Dr. McCall?
I'm doing well. Thank you much. Nice to meet everyone else. Stacy, Dr. Felipe.
Philippe. No, Philippe is fine. Nice to meet you too.
Thanks.
And if you want to, we can do regular names. How do you say your first name? We want to make sure we are saying it perfectly the right way.
All right, let me hear. What did you come up with?
Okay, so Stacy, I'm gonna give this my go. So I came up with Picoya.
Okay.
I thought that was Stacy.
I was saying Picolia. You were saying Piccola.
Okay. The truth comes out. I like it.
No, I think in real life I would have said Picoya. I was gonna try to get you to say it wrong, and then that's what we were gonna do.
Yeah,
I'm sure we have it recorded.
Look, I know that you have worked incredibly hard for your degree, so I just said Dr. McCall-Robison.
You're like, and that's it. I'm gonna take the easy route. It's Picoya. Picoya, awesome. Like sequoia, like the tree.
Okay, so no, don't use the L on the tongue.
No L. It's just there for decoration.
Okay.
That's interesting.
I love it.
There's a family member that we both know of yours who has, his name is I think it's Shannon Max, right? And the first time I asked him, how do you spell it? He was like MAX. And I was like, what? How do you spell Shannon? He's like MAX. But the whole Shannon was silent to him. He doesn't want it to be used. So it's kind of funny. So anyways, so I'm just saying that because her family has a history of wanting to, delete this certain syllables or letters in their name. So it's an interesting thing to me.
We have a whole thing we try to hide from whatever. Clearly.
Yes. Yep.
Anyways,
I'm sure there was a whole family meeting about it. Yeah.
We did.
Doug, you mentioned I would like her, but the fact that she's already jumping in to dig on you, I mean, this is going to be a really good show.
We've had a few conversations, so that's all right. Anyways, all right. So, Dr. McCall, what are you doing these days? What are you into? Tell the folks where you've been and why we haven't seen you on social media for the last 10 years, and you just now kind of showing up on the scene.
So for the last several years, I was specializing with doing forensic psychology work. So my specialty is with, our creme de la creme of criminals. So that's our criminally insane, sex offenders, things like that. So doing a lot of report writing, risk assessments to determine basically outcomes of futures. Can you come out of prison? Should you stay out of prison? Providing treatment for sex offenders that are in mandated treatment programs. So in the state of California, it's, you know, it's rough out here. So it's not good for me to be in the public eye. We don't have protected plates like the judges and attorneys who hand down these cases and things like that. But yet we're sitting here with these clients face to face. We go to court, we have to, you know, testify against our reports and things like that with their family members sitting there. So we try to minimize our exposure as much as possible. And social media is the easiest way, I think, to have you exposed, get you killed, stalked, whatever, all of the above. And I've had that happen before I was even a licensed psychologist, from working on a college campus. So just mental illness is everywhere and everyone can't help their impulses. So I just kind of stayed off the media and kept my job and my family protected and things like that. So now that that's not the focus of my work anymore, and I can focus more on my passions, which is helping and working with the community and making this information. And when I say this information, what I've been trained and go to school for, public. Over the years working with clients, I find it's a lack of information that they have to make informed decisions. So mental health to me is like easy. It's off the back of my hand. Oh, you're feeling a little down. I know what to do. I have the recipes. But there's nowhere to go to get that type of information. Like, you're not taught that in school, how to self-care and care for your mental health. It's just not out there. So I find I do a lot of psychoeducation with my clients. It increases their confidence to make their own decisions. When they go into the doctor's offices, when they decide, do I want medication? What do I want to do for this family member or that? They're making better and more informed decisions. So I've decided, hey, this is the avenue where I feel most effective. So I like giving that information. So I do webinars on just various mental health topics, training classrooms, schools, teachers, just other professionals, family members. I just make it public for, you know, anybody who wants to know. That's what I've been doing. And just doing assessments, things like that, to where I still stay within that mental health field professionally, but the rest of it, you know, it's just here, community, here's the information, heal yourself, have the knowledge I have.
Since you've been in the space for such a long time, how have you been dealing with, or how have you dealt with at least it seems to be, the negative connotation of the mental health, or the stigma that mental health seems to have in this country and in our society?
You know what? I just try to only do my part, where when I have the opportunity for someone to come in that is actually asking for help, I definitely try to reassure them that you're making the right decision. And a lot of times we're going against cultural norms, just societal norms of what's appropriate, family secrets, things like that, that I just try to just be like, hey, well, at least you're here now. Here's how to help yourself before you can help someone else. You know, put your mask on before you can do everyone else's, right? Or save anyone else. And it was odd as I watched a shift happen, and it happened more so with substance abuse first, where celebrities are alcoholics and getting DUIs. And then it's like, I'm going to rehab, and everybody's like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, here's the first step where it's becoming appropriate to actually have a mental illness, right? Since substance abuse is in the DSM-4 or 5, right? All of them. So as I saw that shifting, I was like, okay, it's coming, because, you know, it takes celebrities to make things appropriate, sadly. But then now we see more and more mental health peaking here and there within different celebrities. And, oh, I have bipolar. And then you're on Oprah and they're like, wow, I didn't know that. You can actually have bipolar and still be a functioning human being. And I'm sitting here like, of course, I deal with them every day, right? But as that wave, you just kind of have to ride it and hope for the best and just say, well, good, more people will start to feel this is okay, this is acceptable for them. And then we have COVID that tipped it off at the very end. And now it completely made mental health treatment accessible to everyone. Prior to that, when you really think about the accessibility of getting to a therapist, that's not for everyone. And I would have a lot of clients come in like, this is for housewives and white people, those types of thought processes, because it really isn't feasible. If you think you live in LA, or I don't know, wherever you live, it takes you an hour to get to therapy, an hour to be in therapy, and an hour to get back home. I don't know anybody that has 3 hours to spare in their day. And this isn't counting, you have work, you have kids. And when can you actually go? After you get off work at 5 o'clock, when are you going to get into therapy? So
especially if you add in then the fears and the stigma of, and it's going to get worse if I talk about it, or all this judgment and what this person is going to judge me and be better than me, all of the things that come with it. 3 hours feels like it's not worth the time.
You're absolutely right. And I'm talking if you have the privilege to have a car.
Yes.
Right. So we're not even accounting for those with disabilities, have to ride the bus, that whatever it is, right? It just was not feasible. And there were so many barriers on top of barriers. And like you mentioned, Stacey, I think it's beautiful, just the fear of going to therapy in the first place. I have to now navigate the person coming in because they were in traffic and somebody almost killed them, right? And I'm like, we're not even talking about what's happening. So just watching the shift, and how lastly, I think the pandemic opened up these floodgates of everyone's home, and therapy became accessible. Now we're seeing like, oh, it's okay. I don't even have to walk out of my car. I don't have to drive. I don't have to do this. I can do it from the privacy, from the comfort, from the safety of my own home, right? So I think that too has shifted it. I hope that in the long version answers your question.
So you're working with people who have mental health issues. You described before that in your previous job, you were working with a lot of sex offenders and criminals. So all of that is really heavy work that takes an emotional toll as well as physical toll. So how is it that you take great care of yourself in order to be able to help all these other individuals?
Oh man, it's work, happiness and a stable environment. It doesn't just come. I'm not like lucky, right? I set intention to create a space in my house, boundaries with family members. And this is including my husband, like my work, and I've known him for years. So he's always known, like, I can't come home. I don't do drama. Like, it was just these boundaries that were kind of set out in the very beginning. Like, I can't do this. I can't be stressed because my people's lives and livelihoods are in my hands. So I exercise, I work out, these types of things that are actually really, really important to physical health and mental health. My exercise regimen is tied to my emotional health. If I don't work out, I'm going to eat terrible. I'm going to feel terrible, and I'm going to feel as terrible as my clients. So I definitely make sure I'm keeping up with good eating habits, people that I allow around me, just energy wise. I just don't sit in drama. I don't do gossip. I didn't do social media for years, right? So it just kept me in this space, and the people around me know it. Like, I get off work, people know, don't call me for like an hour. I don't talk. I just have to, let it float off, or I go to the gym, whatever it is. It's those things that I just have to keep in. And then when I don't feel good, I don't feel good. I'm like, I'm done. I don't work today. I travel. So I make sure I take my time off when I need it to recharge. So it's really those things that's really in our profession, we're told to self-care. But when it comes time to do it, it's not always met with, oh, okay, sure, you can have these days off, or yeah, you can have this month. You just have to demand it up front. Like, this is my well-being. I'm not accepting no. You have to take care of yourself.
Yeah, I keep hearing the phrase in my head as you're speaking: healthy people ask for what they want. And I kept getting curious on, how did you ask for what you want? That your people know. They don't call you an hour after work. Your husband knows. Did it come out as clear as a beautiful request? Did it start as all the emotion offloading onto everyone and learning? Talk to us about your process. Help our listeners understand how you got there.
You know what? No. A lot of things people miss our character. Like, one of my role in my family is more of the kind of puts the pieces together. They know this is what I do. So nobody kind of bothers me. If I'm like, hey, the answer is no, I'm not the one that they're going to be like, come on, please, please, please. You know how we train people around us. So I don't have that problem that some family members have these enmeshed boundaries and roles and aren't okay with speaking up for themselves. Fortunately, unfortunately, to a fault, I've been like this since a child. So it's kind of like I've had to learn the real nose back in so much and delivering it with honey versus, vinegar. But as I help people set boundaries with family members, I remind them of how it impacts them if they do not. Again, and I'm always using that metaphor of like, you got to put your mask on first before you can help the next person. So it is okay to set those boundaries and setting yourself up for success. Like at the end of the day, when my workday is over, I won't even turn my phone back on yet. I'll keep it on silent until I want to. I won't feel pressured to answer the call if someone's calling me and I know I'm not ready. So it's that place of learning yourself and what you can and can't handle. It's just I was just taught that in school and kind of ingested it very well. Like I'm more of I need my space anyway, so that it fits right into my self-care ideas and things I train people with that, it's like boundaries.
I mean, I think that's really important because in healthcare, even though they tell you to take good care of yourself, there's not an infrastructure sort of built in for you to do that, right? And so, and people think that you should be accessible 24 hours a day, even when you're off. And I know that with my company, they've had to get used to me saying, don't contact me on my day off. I work for you 10 days out of the month. I don't hear from you the rest of the month,
Right.
And they may not like that, but it's like, and I've told them, you guys have boundary issues. I don't call you on your days off. Don't call me on my days off, right? And so I think the fact that you have those boundaries in place is so important for your own well-being and for you to continue to do the great work that you do.
Yeah.
And it's easy to be on the other side. We've talked about with some other shows that we've had about how it's easy to be the victim. And when there are others crossing boundaries, Philippe, you could very easily be saying, oh, they won't leave me alone. They won't leave me alone. And then you can train them, like you're talking about, Dr. Robinson, you can train them that you're going to respond. As long as they keep pestering you, they're going to respond. And you get to stay in that victim cycle the entire time, rather than when we're in a place that we don't like. My dog is playing with its toy right now. Can you hear that?
No.
Oh, great. Good. We can very much so stay in that victim cycle, or we can ask ourselves, how have I created this? Rather than what are they doing wrong, but how have I created this reality that is making me miserable? And then take the vulnerable step to choose something different, like saying, I'm going to be like, not like other docs apparently, and tell you that I'm going to take days off. Yeah.
It's that place of getting to be comfortable. I even go so far as to say it's knowing your worth. And this doesn't even mean a financial worth. We quantify a lot of things like, oh, I'm worth as much as in my bank account, but I'm like, I'm worth as much as I'm alive and able to pour into myself, my family, and those people that matter. So knowing your self-worth, it ties into how you set boundaries with employers, with family, blah, blah, blah. So I know if I break down, 100 other people break down because of me. Versus me having to accept my mom's one phone call so she can complain to me so I can be depleted, and not even to say my mom, but whoever, right? I'm going to be depleted. When I pick that, I go like this, ugh. If that's how I feel to answer that call, I don't answer it.
Yeah, that's insightful.
That's understanding my worth. If I answer that call, it's going to be downhill from there all the way till I get home. So it is revisiting or restructuring how we see worth and ourselves. Like, if that employer doesn't want me, hey, fine. Someone's going to be like, yes.
Yeah, I love it. Could you shift? You had mentioned you've got lots of recipes that you offer to folks when they are struggling with anything other than mental wellness. And I would even say, to maintain mental wellness, there's a recipe for that. I think we talk about that. That's the lifestyle. When folks, at least folks around here, when they hear mental illness, they immediately go to the schizophrenic, like all kinds of judgments, pieces of it. But when we experience anxiety, depression, things that can be a part of everyday life or on a pretty consistent basis, there's opportunities to take care of ourselves. So that being said, what are some of your, what's maybe one of your simplest recipes, or what are suggestions that you offer that seem to work well for your clients?
And I know you mentioned depression and anxiety. So when you ask that for me, I'm like, which one are you talking about? Right?
Yeah. Yes.
The Rolodex starts spinning. But
Pick
let's just say, depression. And this is, one of the main things is, and I think the biggest piece of the recipe is you have the ingredients, right? If I tell you make a cake and you're like, okay, so how many eggs do I need? How do I know when the cake is done? Blah, blah, blah. I definitely take time to educate the person on what is depression, because as much as we may think we understand it or know it, when I ask someone, well, what's the symptoms that you're experiencing? They may not be able to fully tell me. And they may say, well, and I'm like, well, how do you know you're depressed? Right. So it's that place of slowing it down, because again, we are very anxious to jump and put labels on ourselves, because it there's some safety and security in that. Like, if I know I'm depressed, then, and that's just, again, that's
true.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Do you think that's because we seem to want to hit rock bottom for a need to have a potential intervention versus wanting to then just live a particular lifestyle that may not be, I don't know, I guess the word would be as fun, because you got to really measure it out, and measuring it out is not as fun sometimes.
Well, we'll let Dr. McCall-Robison answer it. Then I have a potential answer to this.
Heck
okay.
Yeah.
I have a third one too.
I think be all of the above. Why we do the things we do, that's our motivations. And I know it ties back into Stacey saying some things earlier, just like being in this cycle, it does something for us, even if it's a negative cycle. It still brings some positivity. There's a pleasure principle. We are not beings that are made up of, I move forward when I'm getting smacked, and if it is, it's because it feels good. I need that to move forward. So when I find someone is needing to label themselves, I think also that is very, it's the world. It's like, if you don't fit in this box, then it doesn't make sense. You have to fit in something to get a pill, to everything's quick. So if I know I'm depressed, I can go get this pill. Or if I know I'm depressed, I can go and do this. But it is slowing down and saying, hey, well, what's happening for you? Not what's happening for what have you seen? Let's put some words to it. And then I can help you with what's happening. If it's sleep, let's talk about why you're not sleeping. Maybe you got the TV on. And I'm like, well, that's why you're not asleep. You're not depressed. You don't have insomnia. You have distractions. And then they're like, oh, I never thought about that. Can't sleep without the TV on. Well, obviously you're not sleeping at all, are you? So it's this clarification that has to happen, where people really think it's one thing until I start talking to them and making them give me concrete answers, that they're like, oh, maybe that's not what's happening. Yeah, maybe it's not. So part of that recipe is, one, slowing the process down of throwing yourself into the broken box and saying, hey, what's happening for me? How am I experiencing life? And sometimes normalizing it, like, it's okay to cry. How about you're not depressed at all? That's a really terrible situation that you're in. Most people would cry. It's fine, and normalizing some things, that it's just a momentary emotion, a setback, than it is this more complex, deeper meaning, like, oh, I'm chronically depressed. I am depressed. Like, no, you're just sad. That's a terrible situation. Like,
all right. What are you gonna say, Philippe? What you got? What was your answer to that same question?
No, I think, look, sometimes labeling can be something really complicated. I do think oftentimes we do people a disservice by giving them a lot of different labels. And this is not just anxiety and depression. This could be, epilepsy. This could be anything, right? I think that from a brain's perspective, that our brains are always trying to keep us safe. And so putting labels does allow for people to make very quick decisions about things, right? But I also think that when people are searching labels, and even when they're given labels, then to some extent, you don't have to take accountability, right? Because you can just say, well, I've got this.
Mhm.
And
Ownership
that's why I'm
gone.
like this. Yeah.
I get
Yeah.
to go in the broken box.
Right.
So therefore
Yeah.
I cannot.
Yep. I'm incapable of, or I have an excuse why, or you should back off because.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
so
sorry, where Stacy was mentioning that earlier about cycles people get in where, oh, I'm the victim. You know, I am the victim of this and therefore I cannot. And it is unfortunate. It is to be broken in our society now is acceptable. It is okay. It is, you know, an excuse. And I think it's muddied up the waters where there's people that definitely need additional help. And then it's kind of like this place of like, well, you know, I have an ADHD, so I can't pay attention. Like, no, I'm about to teach you how you're going to pay attention. When I was a kid, and I'm happy to say I'm 40, but when I was in kindergarten, I do not remember 80% of my classroom having ADHD, like kids now. There was that one kid, little Carlos, was off the wall. You know something was up with him. He was different. He could not sit down, right? But that's one. You walk into a classroom now, it's everybody. Right. So there's something that's off about that. And that's where I'm kind of like,
yeah, it's the teachers. The teachers have lost control. They don't know how to teach.
There you go. Find
Man,
somebody
I
else
guess,
to
I guess
blame.
we
That's
know what
right.
Doug's diagnosis
You're
was and
gonna
how he's not
have
taking accountability.
sitting in front of your house saying that I am a teacher and we did not lose control. Okay, no.
I'm joking. I say that all the time. There's two jobs that happen in the classroom, right? And I said the first job that everybody knows about, the teacher has to teach, but the second job is that the learner has to learn, right? So if the learner is not doing their job, right, then, or something's wrong with their way that they learn, then that job's not being done. And so really we need to start looking at what's going on with the learners, not necessarily always trying to figure out how to make the teacher a better teacher for broken learners. So, you know, so I'm there with you on that.
I definitely try to remove the debilitating part of the label. If you want to be ADHD, not want to be, but if you are, or even if you want to be, I'm going to say, okay, doesn't mean you're broken. So you learn in a different way. Let's talk about how you learn. What are your strategies? What are your strengths? And go from there versus it being like, well, can't. No, of course you can. You can manage to scroll on Instagram for a long time and not get distracted. That's weird. See how that works, you know, but it's just, it is the way we pour into people when we're already saying like, yeah, well, you can't do this. You have to take this medicine in order to manage this or that. And we're stripping ourselves of our own power. We're releasing that, saying, okay, it's someone else's responsibility. If I don't take this or do this or whatever, I just can't do it.
So now you guys are listening to part 2 of our episode with Dr. McCall-Robison. Thank you for coming back and talking about what about how you help people. Let's talk about some of the new stuff that you're working on, like, you know, Insight Me. Talk about that. What's going on there?
Okay, so Insight Me is like in the title and the name of itself. I like to bring insight to people. Self-knowledge, I find, is the most powerful thing ever. And when you're clear about your own ways of functioning, the way you work, not measuring yourself so much against another person, but really coming in and saying, I want insight about this one being and how I accomplish and navigate and interact with my environment. That's what I like to create. That's how I work with my clients individually, is really increasing how do you work at your maximum capacity. Give me all your faults or whichever ones you think they are, and I'm going to show you how we turn them into your strengths. And again, that's through bringing insight into yourself. People definitely may have mental health issues, those types of things, but I'm trying to show them it's not their failure. It's not them being broken. It's not an excuse to say, I cannot do this anymore. You may not be able to do it to the level of someone else or whatever it is, but we're going to get you to where you want to be functioning at your best. That's through doing assessments for families. A lot of times getting your children assessed especially since this pandemic has happened. You cannot get educational assessments and things like that as accessible as you could when schools were fully open and fully functioning. A lot of programs are shut down. A lot of programs are backed up. So I do offer those types of assessments again and training for parents and families. We're looking at early education, intellectual disabilities, autism, things like that are coming up. And definitely educating parents on, this is the right thing to do. It's the best thing to do. It's good you did some outreach early, in addition to those training and webinars that I do for the community.
Yeah. I want to also follow it up with one thing. When we first met, we talked about something I thought was very interesting, how that necessarily, at least among the culture, in the culture, that some of the ways that we educate psychologists doesn't necessarily always apply directly to the minority groups, people of color in this country. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Oh yeah, oh my gosh, I'll be on the soapbox forever. I also, in addition to working for myself, I am an educator. I teach at a community college, Los Angeles Southwest College, and inner city, urban school. I teach for a grad school, the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. And as I teach intro to psychology or history of psychology, I'm often met with students being like, this stuff isn't right. Like, I don't get it. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. And because we have to think as a field, and that these theories were created European, older white male back in the 1800s before we even had cars. So, little how much has changed. So I'm like, if you're a woman and you feel like these theories don't apply to you, this is probably why you were property. You didn't even matter. You couldn't even think then. If you were a woman of color, you didn't even exist. So they're definitely not talking about you and people of color in general. So as we continue to accept these foundations of these theories that I still believe in, I believe in them as a foundation. They are correct in some sense, but there's a lot of gaps and a lack of information and basically upgrading for today and people today that I think is important for the students I teach. I remind them of that. And this is, again, at a community college level, when somebody's going into intro to psychology, to this graduate level where people are going and embarking on becoming licensed psychologists like myself. And I'm like, when you're hitting this wall and you're calling your clients resistance, because that's what the language teaches you to say, you have to remember you're trying to shove something down their throat that never included them. Research, who did you norm this on? What makes your test valid and reliable is your group of people you're able to gather in and research and test this on. That group was very, very, very limited. So it's just often reminding people in general that are in therapy, it's okay if you're not feeling this connection with that. It's fine. And then as well as students, be careful when you're trying to shove these theories down your throat and how much you accept it word for word versus trying to use it as a foundation and seeing how it works with others.
Yeah, I think.
But
Go ahead, Stacey.
go ahead, Fleet. No, go ahead, Fleet.
Yeah, I think even in general medicine, right? We're always forcing down these medications or theories on people, and we sort of take them as they're supposed to work for everybody, right? When in reality, they often don't. And that you have to meet people where they're at to really get them to change their lives, right? So
Right.
I know for me as a epilepsy specialist, that if I give a person with epilepsy a medication and they don't believe in medications, for them their seizures are about, whether it's a full moon out. Well, I've got to find a way to reach them where they're at so we can get them to be as healthy as possible and not having these seizures, right?
Right.
And so I think the fact that you're speaking to that is incredibly important.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I was just gonna emphasize that. And it sounds like that's the transition that your career is truly taking, though I had to be off camera for a minute there. I was still listening. And you're really taking the mental health field and moving it into what do you want to be capable of, no matter what's going on? What do you truly want to be capable of? And let's start walking that path together to creating the life that you want. Yeah, wonderful.
And that's important that I emphasize a quality of life. And I had briefly mentioned in part one that we quantify everything. And I ask people often, okay, so you want to be happy. So what's that look like? What does happiness feel like?
Kirk Franklin song.
What?
I said a Kirk Franklin song.
Oh,
right. What does it feel like? And I can say that. I'm like, Stacey, are you happy? Do you think you're happy?
Yeah, I do.
And then how do you know when you're happy? Like, how do you know? Like, I'm happy.
Yeah, I'm happy. I feel good movement in my body. I feel a lightness. I want to talk nice to people around me. Yeah.
And
what's fun?
Go ahead. Sorry.
What's fun? What was happening in my head is I was actually translating it in a language. When do I know I'm not happy? Oh, I'm yelling at people. I'm tense. And then I was flipping it. Oh, and that's intriguing to me. And I think true that we spend so much time focusing on and defining what we don't want, what we don't like, that really truly describing that, you were actually creating a pause for me. And that's interesting. I wonder how common that is for us.
Very, very, very. And that's one of the scripts, where you're like, what do you do when someone's coming into me and they're just like, I'm just not happy? And I'm like, well, what is happy? How do you know? I need you to prove to me you're not happy. And it is this place of understanding our emotions. There's a range of them. They're all needed. We don't know happiness without sadness. And then you can put this positive and this negative connotation on it. But it is, how do I work for what I want? Some people are like, okay, I want to retire with $1 million or whatever, right? And I'm like, okay, so how do you want to feel when you have that? Like, how do you think you'll feel? Like, how do you know when you're done? What's your body going to tell you? Like, your body tells you when you're full, when you ate too much because you can't breathe and you're stuffed. How does your body tell you I'm happy? And I try to connect that mind body piece where, is it a physical reaction that's telling me how I feel? Or is it the emotion I see? Is it the situation? What happens? Because we can often confuse, and we call this misattribution of emotion, how anxiety can feel like happiness. I get butterflies in my stomach when I'm in love. And I also get butterflies in my stomach when I have indigestion. I get butterflies in my stomach when I'm angry. How do you know what's the emotion? And we're not conditioned to practice that. So like, I'm like, how do you know when you're happy? And you're like, well, I'm not yelling at anyone, So you have to pause. But how often are we trained to qualify what we're feeling? Right? Did you measure that by the number of people you yelled at? You were like, no, I just know I'm yelling, right? So I try to bring quality of life. We always say we want this quality of life, but then it's like by the number, by the scale, by the dollar, by the likes, and I'm like, but how do you feel?
So I have a question, which may be a fundamentally like a rudimentary type of question, but when you're seeing people and trying to help people these days, are you seeing people who are showing up with more, I guess, self-diagnosed depression or anxiety?
Oh, you know what?
And then is it even really those things?
Honestly, anytime someone tells me that they're experiencing depression or anxiety, it may not fit my checkbox. And that's okay. I may not say, well, clinically, you're not in the textbook, right? But it's theirs. It is theirs. So I educate them on, say, hey, well, I just want you to know you may feel it's severe, but according to my checklist, it's not. So here's what happens. And often I'm really seeing this combination of depression and anxiety. People are getting so sad because they're worried about how terrible they feel, and they're worrying about all these fears, and they're planning for all these things that are never going to happen, that it's debilitating, and they render themselves inactive and they don't want to get out of bed. So I'm like, is that depression or is that anxiety, or they are married? First of all, let's break these two up. You know, they are not a power couple. They are like freaking the Grim Reaper, right? I just try to literally educate them. And like I said, I can't slow it down enough to say, okay, you're anxious. What are you anxious about? And I kind of take them through my assessments to say, is a person feeling anxious or are they feeling depressed? I do this with them. I tell them, this is what I'm doing. Without just doing it without their knowledge. Because again, the point is I'm giving you insight. So the idea is to make you not need me. We're reliant on everyone too much. I'm going to make
Hallelujah.
you.
You're doing your job. You're making them not need you. Not all mental health professionals have that belief.
So I want you to be able to do what I can do. You probably legally, you can't do it for someone else. But when you're at home and you're telling me I'm anxious, I'm going to teach you, these are the questions you need to ask yourself. Is this happening often? Sometimes or never? Because then when you know, okay, this isn't happening every day, I'm okay. But if you're like, if you have no idea what to measure this off of, because this is what we do for now, you're freaking out. Right? You feel powerless. You're like, quit. Oh my God, it's too overwhelming to even try. And then I try to bring that educational piece into it to say, you're not as bad as you think. It's just you and your thoughts in here spinning, and that is scary, right? But that's that place where I'm like, let's start slow and small and define, and see what you want. What are your goals? What are your values? Are the steps you're taking in life measuring and matching those two? If it's not in alignment with your value, it's not in alignment with your goal, do not do it.
Yeah, it sounds like you're just trying to, from a fundamental standpoint, you're trying to get them to adjust and shift their lifestyle.
Yeah.
From a thought standpoint, right? From a thought basis standpoint. Yeah. No, that's dope. So what else you got going on? You have a family. I know you're not. Let's take you into the personal sphere of your real life, of who's behind the doctor. What's going on behind the scenes? Are you a fan? Do you have a family? Do you?
I do.
What are you doing for fun?
I have a family. Despite what everybody thinks about therapists, they think we're just these freaking dry people that sit right here in the chair with the robots, right? No, I have a family. I have a husband, been married for 7 years. And moms, I have sisters. I have a son who is 10 months for the next 4 days. He'll be a year on Valentine's Day. So he's my little sweetie pie. He's my little Valentino.
She's like you, Stacey. She got a little son running around in the background.
A little son running around. He's actually up front being managed for now. But yeah, that's what I do. I have a little cute little, his name is Sir, by the way, Sir Midas. He has a long name. I'm super into like long names, like I don't know why, but his name is Sir Midas Reed, and then McCall-Robison. So the whole idea behind it, my husband has a brand for men's, I'm shooting you guys some things in the mail, but it's Sir Grooming Lounge. And we were always like, oh my gosh, we could have kids. We name him Sir. Now he's Sir.
It's funny that when I was growing up as a kid, when I was growing up as a kid, I had a friend named Sir. His name was Sir Aaron. And I always thought it was the weirdest thing that his name was Sir. And like, it was weird to call him Sir without the Aaron part, right? So we call him Sir Aaron all the time. It was kind of funny. So that's a dope name.
I love it. I love that it'll stand out.
Yeah. So that's what I do. I enjoyed traveling before our pandemic. So I'm hoping to get back into that again. That's my big self-care. I love the world. It's so massive, just education wise, going to different places and bringing back history and experiences. It just makes me a whole person. I think the more traveled I am, and well-versed in other cultures and communities, I definitely feel like I'm better able to help and assist my clients with other, real world kind of issues outside of our own little fishbowl that we have.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Where's the first place you'll travel? when it seems safe?
Oh, Ghana.
Really?
Oh,
Going
okay.
back to the motherland. I've been there 3 times. I'm obsessed.
Why?
But-
Why?
Oh, the food, the quality of food. I
Really?
come back here and I am a vegetarian. When I come back after spending, it's like 14 to 21 days or something there, I am a vegetarian. You can completely taste the quality of everything, from your meats to your cheese, like everything. Because
So you're a vegetarian there or just a vegetarian here?
here, when I come back, I eat meat, right? I do eat meat. But when I go there and I spend time and I'm eating the food, the freshness, there's certain things they just can't do. There's seasons, I almost lost my American mind when I was like, what do you mean there's no avocado? The first time I went, they're like, it's out of season. What? Season? What do you mean? Yeah.
Did you ship it in? Yeah.
Did you make it in a petri dish?
Did you make it in a petri dish? I love it.
So it's those types
you
of
to the
things
future.
that's why I'm going back. I'm like, and I haven't seen Ghana. I want to see Egypt, and Zambia, and just eat the food. It's just.
That's funny that you say that. I have a friend who's from Nigeria he's been over here for, I don't know, maybe like 20 years almost. And he had to go home for, took his family home, his kids, wife and kids. And he went there and they said, hey, we want you to go get this chicken so that we can cook this chicken. And so he had to go back out like he did when he was a kid to go actually catch the chicken, to kill the chicken so they could eat the chicken. And he said, I couldn't do it. He couldn't do it. He's been over here for so long that he couldn't do it anymore. He was too it was a weird experience for him. So it's funny that you kind of have a reverse role. He'd rather eat our food here than to eat the food he was dealing with there. Not that it didn't taste better, it's just that it was I guess that intimate knowledge of your food changed how he wanted to deal with it. So I just think that's interesting.
Yeah, it's I love it. I love it. I absolutely love it there. So yeah. But yeah, that's my personal world, just hanging out. Yeah, trying to do some other training. And this is personal. It still sounds like work, but it's a personal belief, with using MDMA to treat those with PTSD. So I'm like fortunate to be working with this company called MAPS where they're doing that. So,
Yep.
And again, it's just holistic ways and different ways that we are revisiting that were working prior to our war on drugs and funding for all these things that were actually really effective, dried up. And we have this bad name for like drugs and MDMA and they're terrible. And of course, anything's terrible when you like abuse it.
Well, let's do two things. Let's tell the listeners what MDMA is. And when she says she's working with MAPS, it's not this map or so, just so you guys know. I know I'm an entrepreneur, but I'm not in everything.
So MDMA is like what we typically know as its party drug is like the mollies, right? But using it properly in its pure forms, and administering it to participants that have reported severe PTSD, this training program, and MAPS stands for the Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. It's actually a really huge program. I didn't even realize how big they were and the financial backing that they have from board members funding the research. I didn't even realize this, but they're making some major headway. We're actually in these final stages and believe we're going to be FDA approved by 2023. So, and again, where I'm saying like this, it's personal and it's a passion because again, it's not something that is out there, and I'm all for using different holistic approaches. A lot of this medicine that they're using is plant medicine, and it comes from these Aborigine communities and, from Brazil, from like places of Africa, things like that. These are old, ancient, ancestral ways of healing and treatment when it's used correctly, right? So we know about shaman and all these things. It is helping people to feel okay with tying back into their roots and family members. And again, using the earth for healing, like eating proper foods and things like that. So that's what I'm saying. It's personal. It's a passion, and it ties into my work also that I'm trained to do. But this is kind of some off the grid.
So I wonder.
That sounds like just a teaser for another episode.
Yeah, sure it does. And then we
write
got
that down.
Yeah, we also have to jump into or find out if like machine learning would have came up with stuff like that too.
Why do you keep?
Because because all right, we are on the verge of letting machines do a lot of our thinking, right? And so if it's going to do a lot of our thinking, then it also means it's going to have to look into areas or look back to the past into things that we may, not be looking back at anymore. So if we're going to put our trust into these machines that we're building, then, I'm kind of interested and intrigued by the fact that is it going to go back and look at these things to see if it has an agenda, to really, take us into a more of a natural way or into a more of a synthesized way of things, making, new stuff or regular, drugs like we make now. So I'm just interested in that. We're turning over a lot of our thinking power to other stuff. That's all. Great
point.
I don't know if you looked at if machine learning is even in what you do now, if it helps or aids you in what you do. I don't know.
Probably these automated automatic scoring that some tests and assessments do. Definitely a lot of clinicians can rely on plugging it into a computer and missing that human aspect component also. So quite maybe, but yeah, I definitely love this different type of work because it does take us back and tying us to the earth and like all these different things that have amongst, I think, history have rode a wave of like they're good and bad and evil and demon and spirits and spells and all this stuff, versus it kind of just being, well, what was happening before, it is what it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, tell the people. Oh, actually, before we tell the people where they can find you, we got two more important questions to ask you. The first one is this: what is the last influential book that you have read that other people should pick up?
The one that I'm reading actually right now and doing this along with my audience, The Daily Stoic. It's about 366 meditations and perseverance for the art of living. And it's just the foundation of Stoicism. And actually, it's blowing my mind. I've had a lot of clients over the years that have read this or kind of follow along with it here and there. And they're like, you need to do this and read it every day and give us an interpretation. And I am finding it is so mind-blowing and so in alignment with what I do. And what I try to teach is basically we're in control. And when you're clear about that, it feels good. So that's one of the major books. And the other one is one I've read like 6 times, and that's The Alchemist. And it's like Paul Coelho. I just find something different each time. It just kind of aligns with what I'm up to and how I'm feeling physically and emotionally and spiritually, wherever the direction my career is taking me in. I find I can pick that up and I just reread it. And it's just, I pick up a different thing from it.
Okay. All right. And number 2, second question is going to be this. What one tip or tidbit do you want to leave for the people of something that they should start doing or stop doing or whatever tip you want to leave?
I would say do the work, people. And it's stop outsourcing your power. Finding you got to work for it. None of this is easy. It's not easy. Stop thinking it is. I know we watch overnight sensations and Instagram and Photoshop, it takes work. Like it takes work. Even the Instagram influencer, they have to get up every day and have a discipline and a routine to have those followers to get paid. It takes work, people. There is no quick button. There's no cuts and lines. It takes work, and you have to do the work and be willing to.
You have sealed the deal on our recordings today. That has come up a lot as far as recommendations for get in there, do the work, get up and do it again. Falter, get up, do it again.
Yep. Get a partner. Have an accountability partner.
Yeah.
I find that so powerful. Who we are partnered up with and in alignment with determines our outcomes. So get a better partner, even if it's just specifically, I need a reading buddy, I need an exercise buddy, whatever it is, you can have different buddies to align you for whatever it is. And that's how you build your social circle and network. Has a negative connotation of like, well, what can you do for me? And it's reciprocity, that it's shallow to have friends that you just do stuff with. But I think it's like compartmentalizing that these are my workout friends and these are my book reading friends. It's totally okay to do that.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for sharing of yourself today. It has been a joy to hear your perspective and hear the work that you're doing. And Doug, I hope we get to have her back.
Oh, for sure. For sure. We got some
good
stuff in the works. Do not worry. We're going to take at least part of the plan that people go to the lifestyle.thinkupexcellence.com. You will see some of our summaries, or not really summary, but a compilation of what she's doing on the weekly reads on Instagram. We will plan to put some of that over there, that content over there as well, so that they can see her read and explain, what's going on in that 365 kind of day read, but we'll have it like once a week. So if you really want to see her, follow her every day, check her out on Instagram, and then we'll have more stuff to come as we, help people create lifestyles that help better the community for us all. So,
Great. And did we cover that? Where can they follow her? Dr. McCall-Robison, can you share that for
follow
us?
me on Instagram. That's Insight Me, and that's the letter N, SIGHT, me, M-E. And that's on IG. Same thing with email. If you would like, that's insight.me@gmail.com.
Wonderful. Great. Well, it's been wonderful. Doug, do you want to wrap us up and send us out?
Yeah, sure will. Well, you guys have just listened to another episode of The Brain Prophets. You know where you can find us on all of your podcast platforms that you would want to listen to. Don't forget to share the show, leave us comments, let us know how we can do better, or ask any questions that we may be able to answer, and we will do our best. Anyways, until next time, thanks for listening to The Brain Prophets.
Thank you.
See y'all.
Thanks for having me.